Welcome and thanks for joining us. Thanks for battling train strikes and all other kind of challenges to get here today.
Absolutely.
My name's Jacqui Barker. I joined Keyloop in March of this year. And prior to joining Keyloop, and the reason that I'm on this stage really is to try and help to solve some of the challenges that we see that are emerging. So my job at Keyloop is to run the global OEM team. And my team work with the manufacturers headquartered around the world. And we look at what's happening within their space, but also what's happening within the local markets and how we can help deliver a strategy, not only from a global level, but within those markets. Before joining Keyloop, I worked for 6 years with an e-commerce specialist agency. We moved from retail into automotive e-commerce. And prior to that, I worked mainly in media, working for these guys actually, but also I had 5 years with Auto Trader launching their manufacturer channel. Harvs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Harvey. I run our alliances business for Keyloop. I've been there about a year. And I have no street cred as it pertains to automotive, but that's okay because actually I come from more of a tech background. So I helped build the partner ecosystem that we have on the App Exchange with Salesforce, and then I went to a data analytics company by the name of Looker. We were purchased, and so I worked for a few years at Google and then came here. So I look at the automotive industry much more from a technology landscape than how it was in the past. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to transform the industry together as it lends itself to technology and how that changes things. So today we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, we're going to frame how the customer is dealing with all of the things that life brings. Then we'll actually move into the challenges of the retailers and the dealerships. And finally, we're going to talk about how technology can bridge that gap, can pull together that sort of fault line as we've framed the whole session.
Cool. Shall I go next?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Cool. So as we move into what's happening for the customer, we asked thousands of customers how they really want to buy a car. Should it feel like Amazon? Should it feel like Cartier? And really, there's no one size fits all when we answer this question. What customers really want is to buy from you the way that they want to buy from you. So the challenge that we all have is to make sure that we make the customers feel really special and actually that it feels intuitive. And this is where technology comes in. And when we talked about delivering this particular part of the deck, it was how can you deliver a personalized experience? And we can put lots of stats and things that you will forget immediately when you leave this stand. So we thought we'd tell a story about what personalization really means. And like a lot of you, I spend a lot of time in the car with my kids going from one thing to another thing. And there was a time when we were doing the eat your tea in the car on the way to the next thing kind of situation. And my middle son is a bit particular about how he likes to eat a sandwich. He hates cling film. He thinks it makes the bread taste funny. So on this particular day, I made him a sandwich. It was his favorite sandwich. And I wrapped it in kitchen roll. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, Mummy, thanks. You just made it the way I really wanted it." Now, we're not suggesting for 1 second that you know how your customers want to eat a sandwich, but what we are saying is that technology and machine learning can do some of that heavy lifting for you. So when we look at what other brands are doing in this space to make this stuff come to life. We look at Deliveroo, how you four dudes could maybe be sitting around the same table, eating a different meal that you've ordered through one app. And what that app needs is connectivity into data points, whether it's the geolocation of that place where you're going to collect your burger or your Chinese, how much it is, and when it's going to be ready. So all of that really hard data sits somewhere in a data source, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be taking you through with how do you deliver this great experience by accessing all of the relevant data that you need to dip into. Harvs.
Yeah, what Jacqui was talking about there in terms of Deliveroo, it's really about shifting the mental load off of the user and onto the technology. So if you're looking on Airbnb or you're looking on Deliveroo, you filter easily, you flip through some things, you see the ratings, you click, you buy. It's a very seamless process. And so how can you actually put the mental load that we are all dealing with onto the technology and off of the person? One of the things that I want to call out in the slide actually is the external factors. So we're all dealing with inflation, recession, war, crazy political climates, and how can you still have a captive audience that is willing to spend their small discretionary budget with you as opposed to somewhere else? How many people recently have looked into your mortgage? fixed rate, not fixed rate, you know exactly when it expires, you know what the rate is when you got it. If you don't have a fixed rate, you're really regretting that right now. And that seems to be kind of a topic of conversation that everyone's talking about. So Jacqui has some data points on this, but how do you actually take that mental load away and make it easy and seamless for someone to spend their hard-earned dollars with you? So Jax?
Absolutely. So on this next slide, we talk about the mental load removal services, which is a really slick way of framing, just make me not work too hard as a customer. So there are some really good examples. Some of these guys are in the room today, but we can see that shift from, I just want to find the thing, where is the thing, how much is that thing versus this thing, and will this thing go farther than that thing before I have to plug it in? So what we're trying to do is just to really help customers answer the questions that every search starts with a question, which is why you now have voice-activated devices in your living room that tells you what the weather's going to do today and how much is the price of cheese or the interest rate. So these mental load removal services, again, will be dipping into data points that allow you to normalize and probably simplify all of that data that you need to give to your customers. So we know that 90% of customers expect organizations to provide something like an online portal, and they don't.
Yeah, and if you look at this, so 90% of customers expect you to have an online portal. 80% of dealers do not. Okay, so we have a big mismatch here between expectation and reality, which is very splintered. So in terms of where the automotive industry is going, it is going into becoming a technology company. It is going into becoming a services industry as opposed to manufacturing. So if you think about other industries that this is parallel with, maybe not in the same time, but in the same sort of shift, think back about 20 years to Apple. Do you guys remember when Apple started bringing out those colorful computers? Like the back of it was kind of colorful and the laptops were colorful and fun. And back then, I think you probably thought of Apple as a hardware company. Now, phone, like this is a piece of hardware, but what is the thing that makes you stick with Apple? It's the software, your wallet, your family photos, taxi ordering, food ordering, every single thing is in this thing. And Apple makes their money from software, not hardware. And that's really how the automotive industry is shifting. Ooh. And I think, if you look at, is this the right slide?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep. If you look at taking it back to the recessionary point and the inflationary point, and how you capture that audience and how you get them to spend their money with you, it's all about the subtle nudge. It's all about the ease of use and the simplicity of the experience that you're giving to them. So in terms of the subtle nudge or the power of the nudge, we have all bought things that we don't need or weren't in our budget from Instagram or Amazon or anything like that. And I'm not saying that servicing your car is necessarily something that you don't need. You definitely do need it. So in terms of the power of the nudge, the audience here loves health and safety. This country is obsessed with it. So what is that nudge that you can give to a customer about, oh, you need to service your car because of health and safety, because this and that, to get them to spend that discretionary budget with you?
So on that, and just while we wrap this section up, so 84% of decisions, one of the first things I learned actually in sales training was 84% of decisions are based on emotion and not logic. So while we present data in a really logical way, it's the emotional impact of that decision. So there are two types of emotion. There's the dynamic and winning, and the I want those shoes whether I can afford them or not, or there's safe and secure. And I think as we come into recession, the safe and secure thing also leans itself into things like predictability and control. So as you ask your customers whether or not they're going to service their vehicles, how can you help them to spread the payments of that vehicles? And normally, servicing tends to be an upfront kind of payment. But we know that actually cash and finance are really important parts of how we manage our budgets. And those budgets are being called into question all the time. So just as we wrap that up, The next section will look really at how we're bridging the gap in terms of what's going on in the back end of the system. So we talk about meeting the customers where they are, but we also recognise that we need to meet the retailers where they are. So there are two different types of customers that we're looking after, the end user, but also the retailers that are using our systems.
Yeah, and I love it on this slide. The opportunity for retailers is real, and it is now. Disrupt or be disrupted. Like, there's a whole bunch of like inflammatory rhetoric around all of this. But really, the key points on this slide are you need to have a deep understanding of your customers. You need to meet them where, when, how, and why they want to buy any service or any good from you. There's an interesting thing that happened last week. So we had our customer advisory board, and the debate came up between servicing. Should you have that key box where I can drop my keys in, disappear, and then my car is serviced and I come back later and pick it up? Or should I actually be handing that to a service advisor and having that human touch point? And it was interesting because we were in a room of experts that have been in this industry for a really long time. They themselves were having that debate between, oh, I want the human touch point. I want to see you and get the keys from you so that then you have that relationship with me. Other people were like, no, no, no. Customers want this thing. And even as individuals, they were debating what they actually wanted. And the net of it is there's no right answer. It is all of the things, which makes your jobs as retailers highly complex. But you have to meet their customers at every touch point that they want in every flexible way that they need it to have happen. And I'm not saying this is easy. This is highly complex.
Yeah, no, it's not an easy thing. So when we talk about, we know that we're going through this transformation, and the world that I work in, really working with the OEMs, we can see lots of different things coming down the tracks that are going to be landing in the retailers in terms of how you deliver an experience. Now, actually, it's quite confusing because a lot of the retailers haven't really been told what that means for them when it comes to how you deliver an agency model, whether it's the new or young used. How do you deliver things like the after-sales experience? Where does the data sit? Who owns that data? There are a lot of unanswered questions. What we do know is that there are probably about 900 different individual touch points that your customers will come across and interact with throughout that journey and throughout their life journey with you, whether it's from doing a search, valuing a thing, how they sit within your CRM systems, how you kind of retarget them in terms of, servicing and then renewals. There was a quote I'm just going to read, so forgive me for looking down because it's on the note, but it's a quote from the McKinsey survey about the future beyond bricks and mortar. And they say that the omnichannel journey, OEMs and dealerships are enhancing the integration of offline and online channels where the offline vehicle experience and ordering are directly linked to one digital backbone to create efficiencies to allow for a more personalized customer interaction. I'm going to show you a demo at the end of this to show you how we're already doing some of that for Mercedes-Benz in one of our markets. But it really does dip very deeply into automated data to provide a really slick customer experience. But the next slide just shows you some of the hurdles that we're looking at.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, so you need to connect to the OEM systems and data. You need to have an omni-channel streamlined experience for your customer base. You need to be running things efficiently for your internal stakeholders or your employees, right? So the people that are actually using the technology to enable your customer base. You then need to make sure that you're building loyalty and trust and brand status with those customers. You need to have your data clean. And then on top of all of that, you need to do it with disparate technology systems that are all over the place, and you yourselves need to knit that together. So it's a highly complex space, and I think this next slide has a representation of actually what it looks like.
So this, I can't claim the credit for drawing this. So Drew Tyrrell, who works alongside some of our retailers and also does some work with us, drew this after auditing a number of different retailers, just to kind of illustrate that spaghetti of complexity that we're all trying to navigate, from some of the systems that have automated updates, some have manual updates, some will have a daily batch feed. So where is the data? Where is it landed? How do I find this thing? But so the work that we're doing at Keyloop now is to try and really understand and actually simplify this complicated landscape of data and integrations to be able to give you the ability to serve a front-end customer experience that actually works. But also, the big elephant in the room that no one ever talks about is that you're kind of bolting on stuff to work around a thing that should probably already work. So we're trying to make sure that through data and integrations, we simplify a lot of this complexity and mishmash, frankly, which is my technical term of the day.
Yeah, and as we talk about meeting customers where, when, how they want, this is an interesting survey. So just so you know, people could select up to 3 choices. So any mathematicians that are adding up all these percentages and realizing they're more than 100, stand down for a second. So on the learn portion, if you look at this, it's, what is it? 38% of that is in-store. So people are learning about your products and services, 38% of them in store. The rest of that is predominantly online, besides maybe friends and family. And then if you go over to shop, again, you have a somewhat conservative perspective in terms of in person, and the rest of that is actually done online or via phone. And then you get to the buy stage, which is pretty much a 50-50 split. And so it really gives you a good outlook of what is the weighting between an online journey and online presence versus a brick and mortar.
So just on that point, and the world that I worked in before I came to Keyloop was mainly around e-commerce and how you deliver e-commerce in automotive. So we took what we learned in retail, working with people like Argos, and then translated that into automotive. So we know that the website is really the center of your digital ecosystem, and it's also the place where your customers make a first impression. So we know that it takes about an hour. Customers expect to be able to do pretty much everything within about an hour, and we know it takes significantly longer than that. But also, first impressions take an instant. So a lot of us, I'm sure, have landed on websites where you're literally bombarded with stuff you just don't want to see. So you leave. And actually, as we kind of navigate around various different retailer websites, some are really slick. We see some great user experience, really neat and tidy. And then we see some that just look like someone's just, a child has drawn it with a crayon, but there's just too much color going on and you're giving me too much information. And as we talked about the mental load earlier on, please don't make it really difficult for me just to answer a question around stock or availability or price and location. Make your UX as beautiful as you would want it to be if you were buying from that site. So work with the people that are building those systems and those front ends for you, but just make sure that the really magic bit happens when you pull the data through, that you know that this thing in blue is going to be available in 2 weeks, whereas the thing in red might come at you in 6 months. You make an informed decision about what it is you're looking to buy based on the criteria that you're thinking about in that buying journey. So just to kind of wrap up on that, so we can see on the left, make sure that's the right side, we know that customers are looking for how they answer a number of the questions on the left, whether it's how much is it going to be, how long will it go, how long do I have to wait, how much is it. So on the right-hand side, what we have to do within the industry is to make sure that we provide access to data live and ready, so that if you reserve a vehicle on a marketplace, it'll lock it in the DMS. You buy it once, you can't sort of sell it twice. So those expectations are that those data integrations should be ready and deployed so that you can do your job and you can sell the vehicles and the services that you have in the right way. So a service appointment books you straight into your system, and the technician is there with the right parts, with the right length of service, with the right vehicle, so that you optimize the uptime that you're delivering.
Absolutely. And as you look at the layers and how this all intermingles with itself, at the bottom, the heart, the blood is data. You're sitting on just like this huge pot of gold in terms of how valuable your data is and how much you actually have. And I venture to guess the majority of you are not really leveraging that data and its expertise in the way that you could or should. Then you have a platform, and the platform actually stitches everything together. So you can have your data in disparate systems. It comes up into a platform. Within Keyloop, we have our DMS. It's a dealer management system. That is that data store. Everything from a sales and after sales perspective culminates in that platform. Then from there, actually, you have integration, you have ease of use, you have API first things that go out from there. So really the key there is having an integrated ecosystem around that platform that you can utilize to make your entire business streamlined. And as we look at more of an illustration of this, this is just kind of a customer journey of like, okay, come in, interest generation, right? Then they come into your website. Potentially there's some e-commerce activity that happens either with Keyloop e-commerce, formerly known as Silver Bullet. Then you come around to chat. Equally, you can go through a mobile experience and you flip through to Keyloop leads, which then flips you into Inquiry Max. As you continue the journey around, there's a lead logged, there's documentation that's stored. It's all stored in the DMS, which is the system of record. And then when you think the journey is done, you have FISC for the retention and the loyalty play to keep that customer back on the racetrack with you and coming around. In the core of this, you've got the data, master data, metadata, transactional data that you should be collating and collecting always. From there, you actually have a lot of connectivity. So we have a partnership with Salesforce. We have CRM sync capability built out so that you can actually, if you have Salesforce as a CRM, you can connect those things and make sure that the data is residing where it needs to. You can do that with Microsoft Dynamics or SAP. And on the outside of this, you have our entire partner ecosystem that is not pictured because there's too many logos to mention. But that is all plugged into kind of a central place so the whole journey can be streamlined and have an end-to-end seamless experience. We have a demo that Jacqui's going to walk through now of how this looks from an after-sales perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Harv. So we're kind of we're on the home stretch. We will have time for questions. That's also fortunate. So this demo just shows you how we've used some of the data points in the DMS. We've worked with Mercedes-Benz and other third-party application providers to deliver an experience from a customer point of view that also takes the data straight from the DMS and puts it back in again. So this takes about a minute and a half, but you can see that I'm going to book a service, and I'm going to put my registration into this system, and I'm also going to give you my mileage. And this will tell me what service I need to book. So as I go through this pulls forward the data, which takes from the DMS what that service requires. It's also going to tell me that I need to order some brakes. So I'm going to go and select the brakes that I need. That will put that into my basket, and I can see that this is, I'm also now going to choose where I go. So it's given me two options. I can pick a date. That time doesn't work for me, so I'm going to go to option number 2. And there's a much better selection of times and choices. So I need to book this in at 1 o'clock at that particular dealership. Now I'm going to enter my details. Well, not my details. Emil, who built the demo, put the details in for him with a Keyloop address. So, you know, GDPR and all that. So, but now I've selected my terms, I've agreed to my permissions. It's going to tell me how much the price is. Now, similarly, and this doesn't look pretty, so I'm really sorry we haven't beautied this up, but this is data in a field, which is, as you'll know, all systems will have data in a field, and it's how we access that, and this is the power that comes out of the system. So it's taking my booking, and it's booking me into the workshop loading tool straight for the retail system. It's allocating a technician with parts. It's booked me into the workshop, so I know that that customer is turning up at that time. All of those things are automated with data and connections, and that's kind of the power of what we do. And we're building this out all the time, and this will never finish evolving as experiences continue to improve. And the ask from us really is that you tell us what customer journeys you're trying to deliver so that we can then engineer and architect the right integrations into the relevant data points for you. That's the really important bit for us.
Yeah, and I think the important part about that demo as well is part of that is a front end that the OEM built themselves, and part of it is the DMS, the system of record. That being said, we have a front end that's built. So it's kind of take what you want off the shelf to get yourself to where you're going, and that inherently kicks us into sort of that open and agnostic ecosystem that we have built around the technology to enable you to choose your own adventure so you can meet your customers where they are. It's very much technology for automotive as opposed to automotive tech. So automotive tech is a very siloed and slivered journey. But if you're building technology for automotive, it actually opens up the landscape a whole lot more broadly. And finally, it's harnessing that technology to serve your multiple stakeholders, both your internal and external stakeholders.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up, I think we always want to, it's always good to end with like just 3 things, right? Because you've had a whole lot of stuff that we've given to you. So the 3 things that we really wanted to leave you with was just be aware of the mental load. We're all customers, we're all shopping and buying all of the time, but what's going on in our mental load? Your customers are going through the same challenges. Simplify the complicated. Understand what happens now and what you need to be able to do. So I always ask 2 questions in any kind of discovery is, what do you do now? And then what's the wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be great if? And could you just? These are the questions that then really lean into that kind of agile development. And also build everything you do with multiple stakeholders in mind. We're working with global OEMs, NSCs, also retailers that have to deliver, but at the end of all of that, there's a customer that just wants to buy from you. So that's kind of the takeaway from me. And Harvs?
Yeah, finally, if you don't want to listen to us, Robert Forster has a great quote here. Car retailers, if they haven't become technology companies in the next 10 years, won't be in business.
That's
So
it.
that,
Thank you very much.
you're finished.
That's our thing. We have 4.5 minutes for questions, if anybody has any questions. If not, we'll go and drink coffee. And please do come to the stand. We have a load of our guys are on the stand today. There's lots of lovely coffee and cake. So ask us any questions. And if anybody wants any copies from the deck, we're more than happy to share that with you. So just come find us. Thanks.
Thank you.